Today we are going to see a story. The monk stole a poor farmer's only cow. 1 year later, nobody could believe what happened. What would you do if someone took away the one thing keeping you alive? A poor farmer depended entirely on a single cow for his livelihood. One night, a monk did something that seemed cruel and unforgivable. He stole the farmer's only cow. The disciple was horrified, but 1 year later, when they returned, they discovered something that changed their understanding of success forever. This powerful motivational story reveals why comfort zones are often the biggest obstacle to growth and how life's greatest setbacks can become our greatest opportunities. Watch until the end because the lesson from this story could completely change how you view challenges, failures, and unexpected losses in your life. If this story inspires you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more life changing stories. Imagine you are a poor farmer. You own almost nothing, no savings, no business, no backup plan. Just one cow. Every morning that cow gives milk. Every evening the money from that milk puts food on your family's table. Now imagine that one night while you are sleeping peacefully, someone steals that cow. Your only source of income, your only security, your only hope. You wake up the next morning and discover that everything you depended on is gone. Would that be the worst thing that could happen to you? Or could it secretly become the greatest blessings of your life? Today's story is about a poor farmer, a mysterious monk, and a stolen cow. At first, it looks like a story about loss, but at the end, you will realize it's actually a story about growth, courage, and discovering your true potential. Stay with me until the end because this lesson could completely change the way you look at every setback in your life. Many years ago, in a small village surrounded by fertile fields and dusty roads, there lived a humble farmer. He was not wealthy. In fact, he struggled to make ends meet. His home was a small hut. His clothes were simple and his resources were limited. Yet, despite his poverty, he never complained. He had learned to survive with what little he possessed. One evening, as the sun disappeared behind the horizon, a wandering monk and his young disciple entered the village. Tired from their long journey, they approached the farmer's house and politely asked if he could offer them some food and water. Although the farmer had very little, he welcomed them warmly. He invited them inside, shared his simple meal, and treated them with kindness and respect. The monk observed the farmer carefully throughout the evening. He noticed something unusual. The farmer owned a large piece of fertile land capable of producing abundant crops, yet most of it remained unused. Near the house stood a single cow. Curious, the monk asked the farmer how he earned his living. The farmer smiled proudly and replied, "I have this cow. Every day she gives milk. I sell the milk in the market, and that's how I support my family." The monk nodded silently. Later that night, after everyone had gone to sleep, the monk suddenly woke up his disciple. "Get up," he whispered. The disciple rubbed his eyes. "We are leaving now." The disciple stood and gathered his belongings, but then the monk said something that left him speechless. "Take the farmer's cow with us." The disciple stared at his master in disbelief. "Master, what are you saying? That cow is the farmer's only source of income. Without it, how will he survive? But the monk remained firm. Do as I say. Confused and heartbroken, the disciple obeyed. He united the cow and followed the monk into the darkness. The next morning, the farmer woke up and discovered that his cow was gone. At first, he thought it had wandered away. He searched nearby fields, checked neighboring farms, and walked through the village asking questions. But no one had seen it. The reality slowly sank in. The cow was gone forever. The farmer sat outside in hut, feeling defeated. His only source of income had vanished. Fear gripped his heart. How would he feed his family? How would he survive? For days he felt hopeless. But eventually he realized something important. He had a choice. He could spend the rest of his life mourning what he had lost. Or he could use what he still had. And what he still had was land. Lots of land. The farmer decided to take a chance. He began working the fields every day. He learned about farming, studied planting seasons, experimented with seeds, and learned how to improve soil quality. The work was exhausting. There were failures. Crops died. Mistakes were made. There were moments when he wanted to quit. But he kept going. Month after month, year after year, his knowledge grew. His confidence grew. His harvest grew. The small field transformed into productive farmland. His crops began generating more income than the cow ever had. He expanded his operations. He hired workers. He invested in better tools. Before long, the poor farmer had become one of the most successful producers in the entire village. A year later, the monk called his disciple. Take the cow and return to the farmer, he said. The disciple had spent the entire year wondering why his master had done something so cruel. Finally, he would get his answer. As he approached the farmer's property, he couldn't believe what he saw. The tiny hut was gone. In its place stood a beautiful house. The barren land had become vast green fields filled with thriving crops. The disciple assumed he had arrived at the wrong place. Surely the farmer no longer lived there. As he turned around to leave, he heard a familiar voice calling his name. It was the farmer. The disciple stared at amazement. The farmer welcomed him warmly and shared his story. The day my cow disappeared, he said, I thought my life was over. But when I realized I had no choice, if I wanted to survive, I had to use the land I had ignored for years. Losing the cow forced me to discover abilities I never knew I possessed. At that moment, the disciple finally understood. The cow had never been the farmer's greatest asset. It had been his greatest limitation. It provided just enough comfort to prevent him from reaching his full potential. The loss that once seemed like a tragedy became a very reason for his success. The monk had not taken away the farmer's future. He had removed the obstacles standing in its way. This story is not really about farmers or a cow. It is about us. Many of us have our own cow. It might be a comfortable job we no longer enjoy, a habit that keeps us stuck, a relationship we have outgrown, a fear that stops us from taking risk, or a comfort zone that feels safe but limits our growth. Often we don't change because we want to. We change because life forces us to. Sometimes life removes something we depend on, not to punish us, but to push us toward a bigger version of ourselves. The job loss that felt devastating may lead to a better career. The failure that broke your confidence may teach the lessons success never could. The setback you hate today may become the turning point you thank tomorrow. Growth begins when comfort ends, and sometimes your greatest breakthrough starts with losing the very thing you thought you couldn't live without. If you learned something valuable from this story, hit the like button and share it with someone who may be struggling through the difficult change right now. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next inspiring story. Sometimes life takes away your cow because it wants to show you your field. See you in the next story. Thank you.